a fingertip away, a play away, a step away. That's life. When people say that you only have one road to success, this is the thing we're going to judge you on, only. That's a lot of pressure.
Folks, there are moments that occur when you're a sports fan that are just impossible to describe. You come home, long day at work, having late dinner, get your beverage of choice from the fridge. Your family goes to bed and you flip on the old TV, and then you see something of great interest. You know those nights? Just a way to kick back and relax, right? Not interest, mind you. I said great interest. It rarely happens, but when it does, it gives you a level of euphoria that's impossible to describe. And last night, I had one of those nights. Folks, it's Mike Randle coming to you on the Screen the Screener podcast. I'm solo today. Gus Kearns and I will be back in next episode to finish off our top 32 college basketball preview. But here where we talk all things college basketball, I felt compelled to come down and talk to you after what I watched last night. As we enter the college basketball season, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably as excited as I am. Mother Nature's tricking us right now, though, right? Warm weather, still football season, and it's hard to conceptualize and replicate the feeling that exists in those brisk November days when the college basketball season begins. So when I find a show that gets me to withdraw early from the daily grind, that daily Willie Loman-esque boots to the pavement life, you sit back and you allow it to consume you, and that's what I did. Say what you want about ESPN. We know they're the leaders in sports entertainment today. I mean, there's other shows, Fox Sports, CBS. They all have their place. But as far as these 30 for 30 series that started back in 2009, I got to tell you guys, I'm all in. And the basketball ones they have produced really have been exceptional. Let's think back. Gosh, the first one I remember was what? Len Bias? It was Without Bias, produced by Kirk Frazier back in 2009. We all remember Len Bias, cocaine-induced heart attack 2 days after the Celtics selected him as the second overall pick in the 1986 NBA draft. It had a huge impact on casual drug use, and it was especially highlighted in the sports community. Len Bias, folks, if you did not see him, would have been one of the greats. And a lot of my friends that are Celtic fans still talk about Lenny Bias. So that was a great one that they had there. Then they went to Winning Time, Reggie Miller versus the Knicks. Dan Klores produced it, and that talked about Indiana Pacer Reggie Miller on the New York Knicks in the 1990s, the impact he had, all those last-second great shots, all those great duels in the Eastern Conference Finals and semis, last minute, the whole choke to Spike Lee thing, right? We all remember that one. That one was incredible. Then they went Guru of Go with Bill Coutier in 2010 that talked about Paul Westhead, his coaching tenure at Loyola Marymount from 85 to 90. Where that team was known for the high-scoring run and gun, right? 6 seconds, how to get the ball up, get it in, 8 seconds, whatever it was. And talented players, they had Bo Kimball and then, of course, Hank Gathers, who tragically died on the court in 1990. One of my other favorites, they produced the Fab Five, the story of the 91 Michigan men's basketball recruiting class. And Chris Webber, of course, was involved later for that notorious pay-for-play scandal. He wasn't interviewed for that. But that was great because they changed the landscape. They changed the way it was cool to play college basketball. Baggy shorts, attitude, fast break, dunks. And a lot of you younger people may think that dunking and the art of expressing yourself by throwing one down on the break started with Michigan. No, folks, it started with the ones I'm going to talk about in a little bit. One of the other ones they did was the Requiem for the Big East. That was the collection of the original Big East Conference. Started with the rivalries, regional rivalries, and how it grew to national prominence, and pretty much the most successful college basketball league at the time. And then how it ended up fighting for survival around 2010 with that whole conference realignment where teams vacated, went to the ACC. That was a great one. People who love the Big East watch that, and I've met so many people who've watched that and actually teared up a little bit because it's sad, because that's a memory of when we were younger watching that as well. Love the Bad Boys. That was another one. Looking back at the Pistons, right, in the NBA, the late 80s and early 90s, what a great team that was. Chuck Daly led that group. Isaiah was the star. Dumars won the finals MVP. But Lambeer, Mahorn, Edwards, and of course Robin, those are the guys. And Vinnie Johnson, right, the microwave. He can heat up in a hurry, right? That was a truly great, great team. But I will tell you this, folks, all of them fail in comparison to what I watched last night with Phi Slama Jama, produced by Chip Reeves. And it looked at the Houston Cougars' iconic Phi Slama Jama college basketball team of the 80s. I mean, I have to tell you, I would be remiss if I didn't sit here, come down, and talk about Chip Reeves. He grew up in Houston, and he told the story last night of one of the greatest teams in college basketball history, period. And I'll tell you what's great. In this world, folks, where people have to win, right? We've become too focused on, well, if they don't win the whole thing, they don't matter. Really? Why is that exactly? Why don't they matter if they don't win the whole thing? That's what I'd like to know. Sustained success over years is what matters. And what Guy V. Lewis did, that was their head coach, Guy V. Lewis, right? I want to change my middle name to V. Guy V. What he did in creating that team changed the landscape of college basketball forever. The dunk was outlawed. In the late 70s. It only became allowed around that time. And what Guy V did is he went down to Houston and he said, I'm going to let players be themselves. We're not going to fit people into a cookie cutter way of playing the game. And he brought in talent from all around the Houston area, recruited locally, and brought in these names that are still legendary today. They talked about Hakeem Olajuwon, how he came over on an airplane by himself. He had 3 tickets to go to visit 3 schools, and it was so cold in New York, and I think it was St. John's or whoever was recruiting him was late to pick him up. He pulled out a Nigerian baggage handler and asked him which of these 3 places has weather that's closest to Nigeria. He points to Houston. That's how he ends up in Houston. What a great story that was. And that's just one of many. Clyde the Glide Drexler, NBA Hall of Famer, was there. And they talked about the story of Benny Anders. That's what this one was based around. They basically paralleled the story of Benny Anders, who many thought at the time was the best player on that team, or was going to be the best player from that group, and how his rise and his demise sort of paralleled the Houston Cougars. That team went to 3 straight Final Fours. Think about that. 3 straight Final Fours. First year they went, they lose to UNC in what was a legendary battle. And that was the Michael Jordan team, the James Worthy team, the big smooth Sam Perkins. And they lost. And it was stunning that they lost. But they had this feeling that they would be back the next year. And they did. They came back next year. They won a great game against Louisville. They made the finals. And, of course, that's the year with Jimmy Valvano, with him running around. And they chart that last play and how Wittenberg threw that shot up and was almost stolen by Anders, who said at the time, gosh, it was crazy last night. He said at the time that he thought he had it, he was going to steal it, he was going to dunk the ball, and they were going to be national champions. And instead, Lorenzo Charles grabs the air ball, which is what it was, and beats Houston, Phi Slama Jama, on a jam. Think about that. How ironic that is. And then, even with losing players, they still get back the next year, all the way back. And they end up losing in that game, the 3rd year in a row in the Final Four. It was a great team. And Guy Lewis has been criticized because in that game against NC State, which was played in Albuquerque, was played in the high altitude, after getting to the point where they were down at half because Clyde the Glide was in foul trouble, and they battled back and took a lead, he slowed the game down. Because I think he thought his players were tired, and he thought, let's let them come to us. And by slowing it down, he obviously made a critical mistake. But that should not define the man. The man who started Phi Slama Jama should not be defined by one moment. It's like those NFL fans who say that Buffalo Bills team that made 4 straight Super Bowls isn't as good as a team that won 1 Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? And Marv Levy's been criticized for years. Really? So Marv Levy, who went to 4 straight Super Bowls, 4 straight, isn't as good a coach as Barry Switzer because he won one? Really? That's what we're talking about. Guy Lewis's impact on Houston, the court's named after him, the whole area was incredible. And folks, if you are a college basketball fan, you have got to watch the 30 for 30 on Slama Jama. It was unbelievable. I'm going to watch it at least one more time, maybe 2 before the season starts. It's great. And some of those dunks, by the way, that Drexler was doing back then, you know, MJ overshadowed him, Dominique Wilkins and Spud Webb came in, all those guys. Drexler was nasty. And Drexler could throw it down with the best of them. I mean, he's one of those guys. I think Shaq talked about it once. Shaq said something like there's some guys that you can't hit on the way up. Because if you hit them on the way up, they're going to keep going up higher. And one of those guys was Clyde the Glide. Some of those were incredible. But I can't thank Chip Reeves enough for that, for putting that together. It was an incredible, incredible 30 for 30 in a long series. He had said in an interview I heard today that he had also produced the Brian Bosworth one, which was also great. But the way that he narrated it, and they basically went on a search for Benny Anders, because Benny Anders has dropped off the face of the earth, still alive, and they do end up at the end finding him. But it was a brilliant documentary. So it got me excited. I had to come down here and talk to you about it. The 30 for 30 Slama Jama on that Houston Cougars team from the early to mid 80s. Boy, they put basketball on the map in Houston. I think they really were the ones who started the dunk and got people going above the rim. Gosh, some of those highlights, the videos, it's just a must watch. And you sit there and you think about it, and I couldn't help because, you know, I didn't know a lot about that team. You know, a lot of people near my age are going to think of Michigan, and Michigan's a team that brought all that and the attitude. No, Houston had the attitude. Guy Lewis could have used a curfew once in a while for some of the guys from what I heard. But besides that, he collected talent. And you'll hear it with coaches today. It's about talent. You need players. And he was the first one to do that. And he went into Houston and he recruited within Houston and got a lot of players who weren't even getting drafted. Clyde Drexler came on and said that his name in the media guide when he got to Houston was Charles Drexler. Really? So kudos to Guy V. Lewis for getting that team to 3 straight Final Fours. I have to tell you, one of the most impressive feats that I've seen in a long time. I don't care they didn't win the title. Again, we've said it before. Gus and I were talking about it in the last podcast. Sustained success. That's what this is about. You have to be talented to do that. To win a title, I think you got to get some luck involved as well. I mean, this is something that may not be popular. Dean Smith is one of the greatest coaches of all time. But let's face it, his 2 titles were involved in end-of-game situations that probably weren't traditionally looked at as, you know, with forced turnovers and things he created. The Freddie Brown pass was not something that was created by massive pressure, and the Chris Webber travel and then timeout. So one could argue, as great as Dean Smith was, one of the greatest, if not the greatest coach of all time, it was even hard for him to win 2 titles. So listen, Guy V. Lewis is not in the same era as Dean Smith, but he did an outstanding job with that Houston Cougars team. And I think people really needed to hear that story because they needed to see how great that team was. It truly was unbelievable. So folks, if you get a chance, definitely watch it.